I have celebrated my 150th cruise. I'm now on my 151st cruise, and I just got done making a video on all the amazing memories that I have from those cruises. But when I was scripting that, what I learned was, you have good memories and you're also going to have some bad memories. And I felt that it would be unjust of me not to share with you some of the bad memories. There's some of the things that have not gone well, things that I've seen, things that I've experienced on board a cruise ship. Hey everybody, it's Brandon, the Weekend Cruiser, where I go on a weekend cruise just about every weekend. And when you live your life and you travel the world, bad things are just going to happen. And that is certainly the case when you're gone for 20 to 30% of the year. You're going to see a lot of stuff. Now, I've seen a lot of stuff, and I've got a list here. I've even got a second list going. If you guys want to hear more of this content, let me know down in the comments if you want to make a second video like this. But this video is going to be very different for me because I'm going to be kind of descriptive in some things. So make sure that you can handle it. I don't know that I want to say trigger warnings necessarily, but there's definitely some content in here that has been really bad. At least in my opinion, it has been really bad. And so I'm going to it's going to be story time with Brandon. And if you have a story time, you got to describe some things. And so buckle up. If you can handle it, great. If not, I totally understand. If you want to skip this video, just leave me a little note down below to say, hey, Brandon, I appreciate it, but I'm out. All right, so let's get started. And the first one here is more, it's kind of funny, but it annoyed me at the time at least. But there was this gentleman, we were on Freedom of the Seas hanging out, and there was a whole group of us at this point. We were in the hot tub, we were hanging out, enjoying, and he decided he wanted to drink Long Island iced teas. Those were the ones that got along well with him, and he could down them without a problem. And he started drinking so irresponsibly. I mean, he must have downed 4 or 5 LITs within an hour. And by the 2-hour mark, he was in the hot tub and unable to get himself out of the hot tub. This is something that he had friends with him on board. And I was even like, guys, are you not going to talk to him about this? Be his friend and help him out here and tell him he's not making smart decisions. They didn't do anything about it. So guess who gets left on the hook to figure out how to get him out of the hot tub? That's right. Brandon, the weekend cruiser who doesn't drink, totally sober through all this, and has to physically pull him out of the hot tub almost. Little did I know that somewhere along the way, he had lost his pants. So he was showing himself to everybody. So I'm trying not to get him kicked off the ship, but we finally got him out of the hot tub. And this is where you got to walk up to get into it. It's a little bit higher, and got him over into a chair where luckily he passed out. But I was so annoyed at not only him for drinking responsibly, but for his friends for never speaking up and being like, hey, what's going on? I get that he's an adult. He can make his own decisions, but I feel like somebody, other than me, the random guy there, should have been like, hey, is this really the best decision you can make right now? Anyway, the second thing, and this one was just disgusting, if you will. So I boarded Serenade of the Seas. It was the first night at Serenade of the Seas, and I went to the main dining room. Solo cruiser, got sat with, I think it was a table of 6. It was a long rectangular table. I was sitting there. There was a couple that sat across from me who were lovely, by the way. We actually kind of bonded. I don't know if it's a trauma bond or not, but I still keep in touch with the people that I met on this cruise, even to this day. And this is going back quite some while. But there was a woman and her mother that then showed up to the dinner table to join us. And they sat down. The mother was probably in her late 60s, early 70s. You could see the wine on her lips. She had already started drinking. And before you know it, literally within 2 minutes of her sitting down, she was upchucking all on the dining room table, directly beside of me, just didn't cover her mouth or anything, just went all over the table. And so traumatic, right? On the table, on the silverware, on the place settings. I mean, it was everywhere. Luckily at this point, they realized that maybe coming to dinner wasn't the right move. Sometimes you need to go to an El Loco Fresh to save your life, as I like to say. Get some food somewhere else before you make it to dinner. It was also the curse of the first night, I call it, where people wake up early. They don't get enough sleep. They hold off on breakfast because they're coming to the ship where they get free food. And then they realize they've got a drink package. And so they start drinking and they never eat enough. And so by the time she got to dinner, her body was not having it anymore. Luckily, the wait staff could not have been more complimentary. They did not clean it up while we were there. They, very graciously pulled us away from this table and sat us somewhere else. which was the absolute right thing to do. But that was, I've seen people get sick on cruises a lot, especially when the ship is rocking some. There was one I did on Carnival, the very first one I ever did, that I probably saw 8 people in the process of being sick, but it was always at an arm's length, not directly beside of me on the table I'm supposed to be eating off of. That was too much for me. The third one here that I remember, and I've kind of learned that some things in this world you just can't unsee. If you see it, you've seen it, you're going to remember it forever. And so I'm getting better about not always looking at things, because there's memories that I just don't want to have burned in my head. And this is one that, again, not terribly traumatic. They're going to get, worse as we go through this video. But this is one where there was a medical issue. There was an alpha on board the ship. And so they made the decision to medically evacuate one of the guests. And so I went down to the 4th floor, because they've got the outside walkway there, and looked down and watched the evacuation. It was one where they were bringing the Coast Guard up to ride beside of the cruise ship. We did not go back into port. The boat came out and we transferred the person to the boat. And so it was really rocky when they did this. And getting this gentleman into the boat, I could have sworn they were going to drop him like 5 or 6 different times, because it is, the swells out there are big, and they're trying to balance that and time it and get this man over. And I didn't even know why I watched, because I was horrified the entire time that they were going to drop him into the water. Luckily, that did not happen. They did successfully get him off the ship. His person that he was with, daughter, wife, I don't know exactly who it was also going with him, and she needed to transfer. And so she was just going to jump on to this other boat. And she, within a millisecond, did not time this correctly. Like, she got ready to go. Like, you could see she was going to go. And it was all the wrong timing. Luckily, there was somebody from the ship standing directly behind her and grabbed her and pulled her back onto the ship so she would not fall into the ocean. So it almost turned out really, really bad. Thankfully, it did not. But that's a memory that I will always remember. The fourth one here, and I remember this more because I got to see the visual of it, if you will. One of the things that happen a lot on cruise ships, and I believe is probably the number one way people get injured, not only when they travel, but on cruise ships, is when we fall. I took a really bad spill in South Africa, when I was traveling there. There was one random step that I missed, and down I went, and luckily didn't break anything. But it's easy to fall. And so if you come on a cruise ship, just be careful not to fall. This story is up on the Viking Crown Lounge. I went up to enjoy one of the night parties, because that's where we used to have the DJ and we had the party and all that kind of stuff. It was the Viking Crown Lounge on the top level. And I'd gone up there, and as many of you know, there's a stage. I say it's a stage, it's a dance floor, but it's a little bit stepped up. And there was a lady that had missed the step, and she was just laying there. Luckily, I came after the fact, but she still was just laying there at the entrance, basically, with a very visibly broken leg. And I always remember just seeing the look of pain and anguish on her face. I've heard of other horror stories with people screaming and doing all that, but for me, just seeing how much pain she was in, seeing how messed up her leg was, is something that I will never forget. And there was, probably 100 people up there, because for those of you that know the Viking Crown and Royal Caribbean, it's a very small section. Lots of people, got to experience this with her, unfortunately. The crew, as I'm going to talk about in another story, normally does a really good job of shielding, but I think I just showed up really soon to when this had happened. The sixth one here, and this is much too common on cruise ships, and of course there's no reporting on it because the cruise ship industry isn't good at this. Domestic violence. That is something that is a real thing in life in general. When you come on a cruise ship with a drink package and a lot of real quality time in a pretty small room, you might see a little bit more of it. And there's one particular episode, and I've seen several, but there was one when I was up by, I was watching a movie on the pool deck, actually. I used to go and watch a lot of movies. I feel like the movies used to be better. Let me know in the comments if you like the movies from years gone by better than the ones today. But I was up there watching a movie, and all of a sudden I start hearing screaming and shouting, and I'm up on the upper level of the pool watching the movie, and I hear this screaming and kind of commotion going on. And so I look, and there's this husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, I don't know what their relation was, just going at it. Like they were almost throwing punches at each other. And then they started doing that right up against the railing of, what was that, the 15th, 16th floor on this ship. And so I went scurrying over to the bar, which was luckily open, and said, hey, you need to call security. Like, these people are about to throw somebody over the ship. At least that was my fear. I went to the extreme, because if you're fighting on a cruise ship and you've got somebody pinned up against the exterior railing, that can end really poorly. Whether you mean to or not, that can just go really, really bad. And so that's the domestic violence situation. At least I'm assuming it's domestic violence that I remember from a cruise ship. The 7th one here is, again, a medical. There's going to be a few more medicals on here. I think actually all of these are kind of somehow or other going to be medically related. This 7th one here, I was in Fort Lauderdale getting ready to board. What ship was this? Freedom of the Seas, back when she was doing longer sailings. I think this was the 6th night. And security was a mess this day getting through the terminal. So what had happened was, they had screened all of us. They had cleared us to get on the ship. And then somebody, somehow or another, got a gun, involved security. It was this whole thing. But they sent the terminal into lockdown. And they, didn't move anybody for hours that we were standing there. And it was hot. It was warm. And, as you all know, not all cruisers can stand up for long periods of time. We're not always in the best shape, in the best health. And it was warm in this massive terminal. And I was fortunate enough to be kind of over in the side, sitting down, and where I could see the full room or everybody that was waiting in line. And it was snaked all over the place, because they literally had asked us to leave. They'd asked us to come back in. And we had probably been waiting for 3 or 4 hours at this point, standing in this terminal, when all of a sudden I see probably like a 6'4" older gentleman. He must have been coming up on 80, if I had to guess, just fell backwards. I watched him fall. And then I remember hearing the sound of the back of his head hitting this concrete floor in the terminal. And I still remember that sound. It's weird how we remember not only the visual piece, but the sounds and the smells and all that comes with it. I still remember hearing his head hitting the concrete on in the terminal. And it was horrible. Luckily, they did have medical people close by. I don't know if the terminal was like, hey, we've had them here standing up for a while. Like, they were anticipating something was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. So that was, I still just, it's the sound that gets me for this one. But always know that if you are in this kind of situation and standing up, it's okay to get out of the line, to ask for a chair, to do something differently, so this doesn't happen to you. The 8th one here was on Brilliance of the Seas. So Brilliance of the Seas is a small ship, and I was sitting on the upper deck of the pool, enjoying some sun. Back when I used to actually sit out in the sun. These days, I sit more in my cabin most of the time. But at this point, I was sitting outside, probably reading a book, getting some sun, and they call an alpha for the pool deck. And I'm like, well, that's odd. Like, I'm on the pool. I hadn't noticed anything. And so the team comes running. They've got a whole alpha team, if you will. And alpha means medical emergency on cruise ships. On certain cruise ships, it does vary sometimes based on your cruise line. But they came in probably like 6 or 7 different people and started triaging a woman in her lounge chair. She had some kind of a medical issue, and somebody just happened to notice that, she was not doing good. And so they pulled her off of the lounge chair. And this is where the crew is actually trained to try to shield the situation. So the crew members, the bartenders, the wait staff, they grabbed towels and kind of wrapped it around the situation to try to shield us other guests from being able to see, which I appreciate, from not only privacy for this individual, but also for me as a guest. Like, I don't necessarily want to see these things, but I was on the upper deck. So they circled her up with these towels, but I could still see down into where it was going, and wasn't smart enough back then to look away. And the next thing I know, they are doing full-on CPR on this lady on the pool deck. I don't know what her medical issue was or what was going on. I don't know that they were able to revive her or bring her back. They did get her on a stretcher and get her down to the actual medical facilities. But watching them do CPR on the pool deck, that's definitely something that I'm always going to remember. The 9th memory here that I have that is really not great is, again, an alpha call. They happen on cruise ships. Like, there's probably not a cruise that goes by that I don't hear an alpha call, if not several, especially if you're doing like a transatlantic, you're doing a crossing. you're going to hear a lot of alpha calls, a lot of medical issues. On this particular sailing on Freedom of the Seas, the alpha call I found out was for one of my friends. So we were weekend cruisers. We did a lot of weekend cruises together, and I had talked to him the night before. It was Friday night. We boarded weekend cruise, got to chat in Schooner Bar. So I'm in the casino a little bit. Smile that lights up the room. Such an energetic personality, so much energy. And, the alpha call came in for him that night. Did not realize it was for him because I didn't know what stateroom he was in. But I found out very soon the next morning that the alpha call was for this gentleman. And unfortunately, he had passed away. And, that's a tough one. Luckily, I should say luckily, but his wife was with him when he passed away. She had friends on board, such as myself and one other gentleman who was able to help and support her a little bit, or at least talk to her. Not that there's any right answers or she knew what to do. We didn't know what to tell her to do. But we were glad that we were there for that experience, even though it's something that I will always remember. And it's definitely not a good memory necessarily, but I'm glad that, me and other people were there to support in the best way that we could. And the last one here, and I put off making a video on this last one, and I'm even cautious to mentioning it now, on the absolute worst memory that I have from a cruise ship. And I'll try to do it without getting emotional, but this one was a tough one for me. Freedom of the Seas. A lot of these happen on Freedom of the Seas on weekend cruises, most of them. But it can be any cruise ship, it can happen. But in this case, I was on board the ship. I started YouTube, so it was post-COVID. It was early on. And there was a video that I wanted to get out, and I was trying to find good Wi-Fi on the ship so that I could upload, a 1 gigabyte video file so that I could share with you all who knows what. And so I went upstairs to the concierge, or to the Diamond Lounge. I went to the Suite Lounge. I was on the promenade. I was just kind of bouncing around and couldn't really figure out where I needed to be. I just felt like I needed to keep moving. And so I wound up going back to my stateroom, and I got the video. I went outside on the balcony and said, okay, Wi-Fi, I'm giving up on you. It's not working with the Wi-Fi. And so I turned on my cell phone. We're still in Miami. We're literally coming through the channel. I was like, I got to go because I'm going to lose reception, or at least lose the strength of it, so that I can't upload this massive file. And so I'm sitting outside on my balcony, and I overhear the person in the balcony beside of me and somebody else just talking. And I didn't think anything of it. You hear people talking on balconies all the time. And then I started hearing certain words or things, and it just triggered me to go, something's not right over there. And so I looked, and I still remember this. Again, visuals and, sometimes what you hear and what you see. I remember looking, and I could see somehow or another underneath the balcony doors. I'm looking out my balcony now to reference it. I could see that there was a pair of white socks. The lady was wearing these. I always remember those white socks. But she had gone up on her tippy toes more than I was comfortable with, more than a normal person would go that close to the edge of the ship, rise up that far. And I could immediately tell that something was very wrong in the stateroom beside of me. And so, me being me, for whatever reason, I jumped up and literally walked out and just went, "Hi, I'm Brandon," and introduced myself. I realized that, she was talking with the people above her. Somehow or another, they had noticed it as well and had started engaging her in conversation. And she was ready to go overboard. She was done. Didn't feel like she had anything left here. There was lots of deceased loved ones in her life. And in this moment, she was done. And she was prepared to go overboard. So much so that she had pulled over one of the lounge chairs and had now started standing on that. And I think I was probably only talking to her for 5 minutes and just basically, telling her you're not doing this today. And it was a really tough conversation. I'm not going to go into all the things that I said, the things that she said that I will for always remember. But I was able to whisper I don't even know whisper, but she got distracted at some point. So I looked up to the people above and I said, "Call security." And they understood, went inside, And, within a matter of moments at that point, security came into her room, and luckily was able to avoid what could have been a very tragic situation right in the canal. I mean, we were still leaving Miami just on the other side of Fisher Island. We had not even been on the ship that long. But I remember as soon as security came in, I just turned back and just went, I think I said things that I shouldn't have, but all of a sudden, the stress of that situation, because being what you think is responsible for somebody making that decision or not making that decision, broke me. I mean, I could not function for 2 days probably after that situation. So much so that I couldn't work. I called out of work. I called our employee assistance program. I was like, I just need to talk to somebody. Like, I don't know how to process this. I've never been through this in my life before. And they were able to give me some good guidance and counseling and say, you know what? It's okay that you feel really horrified by this situation, because it was a horrible situation that you were put into. But, when I think back on it, I try not to think of all that as a bad situation, but how great it was that I was there in that moment. There's a reason why I couldn't get situated, why I couldn't get settled, and why I wound up being on my balcony when I was. All right, so I'm going to move on from that one. But that is my most tragic yet memorable thing from a cruise ship. So hopefully making this video was a good thing. I just wanted to share with you guys that, out here, it's not all roses and butterflies. As much as I have so many amazing memories, when you travel a lot, whether it's on land, whether it's on cruise ships, you're going to experience and see things because you're living your life. You're out there. And there's also a lot of bad things that happen in this world that you get to take part in. And so I felt like it was my responsibility almost to balance out my other video, which is here, on all the great things that I've been able to do, with also the things that live in my mind that I will also never forget that have not been the most wonderful at all. All right, everybody, this is Brandon, the Weekend Cruiser, where I hope to see you on a weekend cruise soon.